Good morning. I'm Carol Meyer. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation for Earth Science, which serves as the Secretariat for the ESIP Federation. And Reagan asked me to talk this morning a little bit about how our community employs different types of governance processes for reaching consensus for data management and research-related activities. For those of you who aren't familiar, the ESIP Federation was born out of a National Academy report back in the late 90s, which suggested to NASA that they needed to do a better job of engaging community stakeholders in the evolution of its ESDIS system. And so NASA basically ran a competition and funded 24 projects, and a condition of their funding was basically that they were told they had to federate. And so in 1998, the Federation was born. And 24 members at the outset. NASA added its DACs, its data centers, pretty much from the beginning as well. And we've grown in the ensuing time to be 140 members strong, representing multiple agencies, different sectors, commercial, nonprofit, academic, as well as public, and are starting to span our traditional atmospheric and land and ocean bases to step into both the life sciences and solid earth communities. And basically, ESIP is a networking organization. We provide a forum for practitioners in the data and technology space to come together and share expertise, knowledge, technologies. It's a real different model. And what I think I'd like to stress on this particular slide is that the ethos of ESIP is one of openness and collaboration and community driving. I don't tell anybody to do anything. I basically provide the forum, and we are a bottom-up organization where the best ideas come from the community. And if more than one person thinks that that idea is a good one, it takes off and has a life of its own. What I'd like to talk about, and Susie touched on this in her slides, is what drives our community. And in a word, it's interoperability. We're concerned about making data work with other data and systems work with other systems. But we recognize that this is not merely a technical problem, that we tend to think about interoperability very holistically. We talk about human and organizational interoperability too, because we think it's those kinds of relationships that need to be built, like the organizations that are meeting this week, to build the relationships and the trust to actually make something happen, because the stovepipes can continue to exist in and of their own right, but to be able to perform integrated science, we need to build relationships, and the only way you can build relationships is with people and organizations. So in thinking about what to say this morning, the amount of time available, I wanted to just give you 3 examples of things that the ESIP community has worked on, and then talk a little bit about how they reached consensus, what their governance process was. And the first case, it came to light in discussions within our data preservation and stewardship cluster that lots of our members were using identifiers to provide permanence to their data sets. But no single identifier was being used by everybody. And so the community did a sort of a straw poll of who's using what, and then realized that there would be value in trying to understand what the different identifiers could do for what kinds of functions each one would serve. And so they developed a list of criteria, review criteria, that each of the identified identifiers was put up against, and did an analysis. And that analysis was published in the Journal of Earth Science Informatics last year, and we've made those results available to the community. Anybody who wants to pick up on that and figure out what particular identifier scheme is useful for their own shop, that they can consult this particular paper. What's important here is that this was very much of a bottom-up process. A problem was identified, a potential analysis was proposed, they executed it and put it out for public review, and now has moved on. so that's one example of how we as a community tackle an identified problem. Another, and many of you have probably heard about this work, is related to data citation. Our community, which is squarely in the data realm, has long felt that data producers, data providers don't get the same kind of credit as those researchers who are publishing papers in peer-reviewed journals. And so they wanted to raise the visibility of data because the reward system hasn't yet caught up to recognizing that data science is a profession in and of its own right. So again, a need was identified. We didn't start from scratch. We borrowed heavily from the International Poll Year's data citation guidelines and used that as a baseline for discussion. A group of people who were interested in this iterated on a draft, and with 100 plus members, you can imagine there were lots of different opinions about what should go into this. So this was not something that was reached all that easily, but over the course of a year, consensus was gained. It was put out to our community, our big community, for review and comment. We received lots of input, and a draft was presented to the Federation Assembly, which is the body which governs the ESIP Federation, and it was adopted in January. If you want to see the guidelines, they're at that bit.ly link. And then the third example, which is a little bit different, comes out of our discovery cluster. We have a number of data center members, all of whom were using different discovery services for how you might access their data. And some folks from Goddard and JPL got together and said, we should really be looking at what we're all doing and seeing if we can't narrow the field of services that are out there. And so they borrowed from the open provenance model community a review process that would allow proposed services being put out for a review. The community would get an opportunity to review, comment, revisions could be made, and then a vote, a simple up or down vote was made whether or not to accept or reject a particular protocol. And the thinking was if these things are simple, if these solutions are simple enough, voluntary adoption is going to happen, and in fact it is happening. So again, it was a bottom-up approach that was trying to make to improve the interoperability across a distributed set of organizations. And it was two people in the community who said, we really need to do something, and they formed their own process for doing it, for vetting it, and the results are clear. This is an ongoing activity. We've invited the Mercury Consortium to submit Mercury in for a review because we know a lot of groups are using that. And to make a gratuitous plug, if anybody's interested in getting involved in ESIP, I've shared some links. Our larger organizational governance documents are the first one. To see what's going on and what we care about, you can visit our wiki workspace. This spring, we're going to be launching something we've built, the ESIP Commons. It's a place to provide non-traditional publications a home, so things like best practices, documents, guidelines, poster abstracts, meeting proceedings, white papers, technical papers, that kind of thing will be launched this spring. We invite you to come to a meeting if that's your thing. ESIP's a pretty dynamic community where people come away saying, hey, I've made some great connections and I look forward to new collaborations. And if you want to join any of our discussions, that last link will give you an opportunity to see what we're doing and join any listserv. We're entirely open for participation. Thank you.